She works as a senior lawyer for a local authority practicing in family and children-related matters. On request, provides advice on immigration matters and affiliated to a law firm in the east of London who provide advice and assistance to people in family, immigration, and civil matters. A round of applause for her again. God bless you, man. You look so radiant. You know what? If you want to make this open convention again, you know people like this, when they are 70, when they are 80, when they are 90, you see that? You see them walking majestically. But the Lord will help us that we are on the same side. The Lord will help us. It is well with you. You don't need to die again. Hey, it is well with my God.
Amen. We thank God for today, and I thank God for the opportunity to come here and speak. It is indeed an honor. Thanking God for the father of the house, Reverend Lowell, Elder Adebola, the wives. Thank God for you, and I thank you for the opportunity. It's indeed an honor. I should introduce me. My name is Ifeoma Obioha, and I'm a barrister. I actually practice in child protection matters as well in the local authority, and then deal with immigration, affiliated to a law firm, and provide advice when needed. So today we're going to look very briefly at current immigration issues. Now, all of us must know somebody who has an immigration problem, if it's not ourselves, and we know people who need help. Maybe it's our family members. I imagine if you look at statistics, you would have at least 1 in 4 people who know somebody who has an immigration problem. So it's not something to be ashamed of, but people need advice, because you find that as the immigration problem is persisting and David Cameron is trying to just get us all out of here, if I can use that word, and so he's making things very difficult. Yes? So you have to be well armed and have good advice and information so that you can make appropriate applications. So what we're going to look at today is I've put a few areas, because as you all know, immigration is very vast and we could stay here all day talking about the different sections and areas. But what we're going to do is look at a few areas: human rights, asylum applications, if you want to bring your spouse to the UK, visitors visas as well. So first and foremost, we're going to look at human rights applications. Now, some of you may have heard of the Human Rights Act 1998. And what that did, it brought in some, would I use the word information, it brought in some rights for us. So that if you are here in the UK and you are an overstayer, and you have sought to make applications under the immigration rules and you have failed, the Human Rights Act allows you to make an application which is, if the UK Border Agency allow it, they say it's discretionary. So what it is that you didn't get your leave to remain under the general immigration rules, it's discretionary, so it's sort of at their discretion. It's, we in the Christian world call it favour. Yes? Thank you. And so it brought in a number of rights and freedoms. There's lots of them, but the ones that generally affect us are Article 2, right to life, Article 3, prohibition of torture, Article 4, not prohibition of slavery and forced labour, Article 5, the right to liberty and security, 6, right to a fair trial, and Article 8, the right to respect for private and family life. So under the Human Rights Act, if you cannot obtain leave to remain under the immigration rules, then sometimes if some of you know of a lawyer, you have immigration issues, they will say, okay, we're going to make an application under the Human Rights Act. And if granted, these are based on the discretion of the UK Border Agency. So this act can be used by anyone who is in the UK and you are not here lawfully, you are an overstayer. So maybe you came as a visitor, you had a 6-month visa, and you have stayed past that 6-month visa, and we are now into 10 years and you're still here. Glory to God. Hallelujah. Yes, we know that happens, yes. Here 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Then God makes a way. And so when you make an application under the Human Rights Act, one of the reasons that you say you cannot go home due to the fear for your life, or you have developed a personal or private or family life here in the UK. So sometimes that development of that personal private life may be that you came here, you're an overstayer, but then you met the love of your life. God made a way and you got married. and or you have children. So it would be based on that you now say that I know I'm an overstayer and I'm making this application, and really this type of application should have been made back in my country to come, but I want you to use your discretion based on the fact that I'm maybe married to a British citizen or somebody who has leave to remain, or have had children, and those children are here, and maybe their father or their mother is British, or even if they're not British, I've had the child, and these children have been here for a long period of time, and they have built up a family life here, so it would be unfair for them to be able, say for them to be removed and for me to be removed with them. And so then that is at the UK Border Agency's discretion. And so when it's outside of the rule, it's based on exceptional, compassionate and compelling circumstances. So I've had cases like that. For example, I had an elderly lady and she was brought here, a Nigerian lady, Igbo lady, well she's Igbo lady, and so she came over here and she was brought over here to take care of people's children, as we do. Yes. And so after that, as they do, started to maltreat her and took her passport. So effectively what happened after that is that she now was in distress. And actually, to tell the truth, it was actually my brother and sister who actually, my sister took care of my nephew. And at the time, she was an overstayer, and she put her application in for leave to remain under the immigration rules, and it was refused. They said, you don't have leave to remain here. Any application you're going to make, you have to go home and come back. So then what happened is the lawyer now made an application under the Human Rights Act. And so in that scenario, she now said, I have no family in Nigeria. I have no one there. It's here I have people now that I've built up a network. I don't have anybody in Nigeria. Here I've built up a network, and actually I'm living with this family and they are helping me. And so my sister, my brother-in-law, so she put the first application in, it was refused, which if I just say that if you put an application in and it's refused, don't lose hope. Because part of it is a game, if I can use that word. So don't lose hope. So whatever else you can do, if it's appeal and appeal and appeal on top of that, keep appealing. God will favor you. Amen. So as God would have it, the first application she got was refused. And so then she now appealed and went to the immigration tribunal. So my sister wrote letter, I wrote letter even, my brother-in-law wrote letter, and she compiled all the information she had, showing that she had nothing to go back to in Nigeria, and she received discretionary leave to remain. So it works, it happens. Sometimes it takes a long time, but you have to persevere. Okay? So those were her compelling and compassionate reasons. Have no family, have nobody, etc., etc. And here was where she had built up life, and she'd been here for about 10 years. So any application that you make under this category, you have to either show that you're in fear of your safety or that you have developed a personal family life here. So when we talk about the family life, that is Article 8, right to family life. So some people say, well, I've actually built up a family life here. Like I have another case, and he's actually come here, he came in, left, came back, and then became an overstayer, and has now got married, and he's married somebody who has leave to remain. So he said, well, I've now got married. So we put the first application in, it was refused. And so he's now put another one in, and they are now considering it. And it's on the basis that I've now married, and I've married somebody who has indefinite leave to remain. So it's my right to family life, and I don't have anybody in Nigeria who I can go back to. So when these applications are put in, what they look at is your compelling and compassionate circumstances, which I've said again, we understand as favour. Amen? So God will favour us in Jesus' name. Amen? And then this application is then submitted and considered by the UK Border Agency. The first application is to the Secretary of State, which is the paper one. If that is refused, then you may have heard of people saying that they go to court. So after that, the first hearing after that is before a judge in an immigration tribunal. I had another case like this where you had a lady, she came in, she was an overstayer, and then somehow her fiance came in as well, and he used, if I might say, other means to come in, but got into the UK. One thing I like my pastor said, he said, life happens from somewhere, things start from somewhere. So I'm not condoning how you came, because I think, if I'm correct, he entered from Zambia to Gambia, across the water in a boot to France and here. So I know my pastor says, life starts somewhere, so I'm not condoning that, but that he was now here. So then their fear of going back, they said, is that they were part of a particular organization and you couldn't leave the Nigeria. So if they went back, they would be they would be at risk of their safety be at risk. And to cut a long story short, after much ado, going back and forward, refused, removal direction set, they now have discretionary leave to remain 3 years and getting ready to renew it. And in addition to that, God was faithful in that one, if I can say. Because another thing, and I've got it at the back of my paper, and I'll give you copies of this, is one thing I must say is that if you are here and you do not have leave to remain, please do not use people's papers to work. Okay? We are Christians, so we have to have a standard of integrity. And the reality of it is that if you are caught and you're doing that, that can affect your application that is currently before the UK Border Agency. And if you don't have an application, that even makes it worse. So I know that some people say, oh, well, how am I going to work? What am I going to do? Do not use someone's papers to work. So they put your picture on it, but it's their name and you are working. Because eventually you can get caught out. And this example I gave you of those who have discretionary leave to remain, the lady was here. So she's here, she came in overstay, but they both put their papers before the UKBA. So waiting for a response. She was working in a hospital and had obtained somewhere, because I understand that there's these places where they make the papers. So she had obtained it, quietly working in a hospital. Quietly working for a couple of years. One day, HR say they want to see the original of everybody's papers, and apparently she must have showed her copy. So it appears there might have been a tip-off, some information, and basically they raided. They went into their office, she wasn't there, they raided her home and they arrested her. And she was in Pentonville, no, not Pentonville, Holloway. She spent about 4 months there. And that was for working using someone else's paper. It's an ID fraud offence. And if I can go as far as to say, she was actually a relative of a relative. So we were all up involved. So she went into custody, we tried to make bail application, refused bail application. She was pregnant, has 2 children. Yes. So even her husband then had to leave where he's living, go and live with his sister. We're running helter-skelter. That's why I said, don't do that, because it can affect anything else that happens later on.
Credibility.
Yes, credibility. And God doesn't like that. So anyway, to cut a long story short, she spent 4 months in custody, was pregnant, and so effectively, the barrister who was instructed said, what you're going to get is, the case law says that you will get 12 to 18 months, and after that you'll be deported. So we said, okay then. So we got to the day when she was going to be sentenced, and God is faithful, so He's a forgiver. And she repented. And I didn't come here to preach, but it's a testimony. So to cut a long story short, when we got there on that day, and it was a judge, and we've been praying, mercy God, mercy. I was even saying, okay God, even if she's going to prison, make she go just 3 months and then let them deport her. So on that day, she'd already spent 4 months in prison, and basically, to cut a long story short, the judge said, you've already spent 4 months in prison, in custody, you have 2 children, you're pregnant, you've already shown that you're sorry for it, and you've shown repentance, remorse, so I'm going to give you a 4-month sentence. So that means she went home, the sentence ended that day. And secondly, and immigration were there sitting, watching, waiting for her to say, and deportation. And she said, I'm not going to do a deportation order either. So at the end of that, she came home with us. They put their papers in. Now she has 3 years. You know, she even had twins 2 years ago. She got 3 years, and now she's getting ready to go home with her family to Nigeria next month. So God is faithful, but don't do that. Okay? Try as much as possible. I know there's other ways of getting money, you take care of children and all of that, we know all that. But in terms of taking someone else's documents to work, that's sin. So we thank God. So these are discretionary applications you make, and you get discretionary leave to remain. So maybe you're married, you have children here. There are occasions as well sometimes where you have children who have been here for 7 years. And so if the children have lived here for 7 years, you can say that you are the parent of somebody who's been here for 7 years. You can get that. Also, if you have been here for longer than 10 years, all of these are discretionary applications which you find that with much prayer and perseverance, these are the ones that are granted. And if you make the application the first time and it's not granted, then you can put an appeal in, okay? And we keep putting appeal. If they refuse it, then you put another appeal, and they refuse that, put judicial review, and if they refuse that, then, and that just keeps dragging the time, and before you know it, they will grant you. Amen? So those are those type of applications. So if you know anybody here and they've been putting an application in, they keep getting refused, find out, say, is it a human rights application? What application is your lawyer putting in? And another thing I was saying is also in my tips is that make sure you get a reputable lawyer. Because everybody is doing immigration now. From their house, from the school, everybody is an immigration lawyer. Get a proper, reputable firm so that once they charge you, they charge you. The firm that I'm affiliated at, even there were some people we said to them after a while, they didn't have any more money. He said, okay, don't worry, I'll just continue doing it. And they paid him the bulk and they just didn't have any more money. Get a reputable firm who will not take your money and come back and then you still don't have leave to remain. And they could have done much more for you, okay? So make sure you have a reputable firm. Don't go, oh, they say, oh, this lawyer, if you go to him, it's happening there. No, get a reputable firm. And God will do the rest. Second type of applications you sometimes hear of are asylum applications. And these applications, they're normally made when you arrive into the UK, right at the place where you go through immigration. You say, I want to claim asylum because where I am in Syria, for example, I'll be persecuted, there's war, there's conflict. That's why you see all the Syrians coming over now. All of them, I believe David Cameron said he's going to give them 5 years and then send them back. But they have now got what we call refugee status. And so when you're recognized as a refugee, you're saying that you can't return back to your country because you're asking for some type of international protection. And so all asylum applications are determined by the Secretary of State, and it's based on what we call Geneva Convention, okay? And so such applications are made by a person at the port or airport in the UK and referred to an immigration officer. And while your application is pending, you cannot be removed. And that's for any application. Any application that you make, as long as it's pending, they cannot remove you. So I know there was a case of somebody who had an application and then there was some confusion and then they were detained and then they were on the plane back to Nigeria because the application hadn't been considered yet. They had to bring them back to London. Yes. So until it has been, until your application has been considered, whatever, they cannot send you back, okay? So what is asylum? Someone says that I'm at risk of being persecuted in my country. And so they're saying they need to go abroad and ask for asylum in another country, and in this instance in the UK. And you grant asylum, give someone permission to remain in another country because they say they are at risk of being persecuted in their own country. And so the Syrian people who are coming over now, you see that as an example. And so once you have made your application, you're not here illegally until your application is determined. So when they look at you have a fear of going back to your country, that is your fear based on your race, your religion, your nationality, your political opinion, your membership of a social group, or you're unwilling to seek protection from the authorities in your own country. So that is asylum seekers. And so once your application is made, then they will consider it. So sometimes some people will say, well, I'm a member of a political organization, and if I go back to my country, they will kill me because that organization is seen as maybe a terrorist group. So you could say possibly there. Or I am Christian, and if I go back to my country of Libya, I will be persecuted because that's a Muslim nation and I'm Christian. That's another category. You have a political opinion. That's another category. All of these things conditions or criteria for you to say that you are an asylum seeker. And so what happens is that when you make the application, there's some people who make it at the port and some people who come through on the visitor's visa, and then as the visitor's visa is expiring, they now say asylum, which is okay, but you may find it's difficult more because they're going to say, well, why didn't you make the application initially? So after you've made that application, after a few days, you'll be interviewed by a caseworker. And they will carefully consider your documentation. So if you are claiming asylum, it cannot just be, oh, I'm claiming asylum because I'm at risk of fear for my safety. They normally will do what they do, country investigation, and find out if there's issues in that country that you can't go back. A lot of cases I had at the time, they said they were being persecuted in Nigeria, so they had to do research and say, well, what is the persecution in Nigeria? So maybe if it's up in the north, Boko Haram, and what's happening there, and that's, you may have a chance through that avenue to obtain a refugee status. So what they do, they carefully consider what you are, what you have said, and then they will now ask you to come for an interview. Once they consider your information, they'll come for an interview, and you will now have to give a full account of what you say happened. And what you normally find a lot of the times is that initial time they can refuse you. So then if they do, it's for you to put in an appeal, and by then you should now have a lawyer, and you gather all the information regarding your situation and put it before them. And so what they do is they generally look at everything and decide whether you meet the criteria. So you're saying that you have harmful treatment, your fear of persecution, you can't find protection anywhere else because of race, political position, political opinion, religion, all of that, those will be one of the reasons. And if you are successful in receiving asylum, then you will get refugee status which lasts for 5 years. So you can work, you can claim benefits and all of that. And in some occasions they may not give 5 years, but then they give possibly 3 years, okay, which is discretionary. And again, all of us have scenarios. My brother-in-law, he was here and he was an overstayer, and it was via the route of asylum. And then when he wasn't granted it via asylum, it was now, we made a discretionary application, and he was granted leave to remain under the discretionary application. And he is now a British citizen, acting like he was born here. Yes. So God works it out. And asylum seekers are not allowed to work unless you've been here for more than 1 year. So as far as it's legal work where you're using papers, asylum seekers cannot do that. But once you have been given asylum, then you can work and claim benefits. Are we clear on that?
Yes.
Good.
Right on.
Last but one is spousal visa applications. Now, some of you may have heard a lot in the news, maybe last year, where you are now a British citizen, or you have leave to remain in the UK, and you want to bring your partner, your husband, your wife from abroad, and let's say for us, Nigeria. And so the rules had changed. So before, when you're going to bring your spouse in, you have to just show you have enough money, you've got somewhere to live. You don't have to be living in a 5-bedroom mansion, you can even be living in a room. Doesn't matter, but what they want is to make sure you've got somewhere this person can come and stay, and you have enough money to take care of them, because they don't want, when you bring your spouse in, then they start knocking on social services door and asking for benefits. Not that they wouldn't be entitled to it later on, but they don't want that. So they want to make sure that you earn enough money. So the rules changed about 2-3 years ago, where that if you want to bring your partner in, your spouse in, your husband, your wife, you must be earning £18,600 minimum. So that caused a great deal of uproar. It was appealed, and it was in, I think it was in the Supreme Court last year. They were trying to get the amount reduced, because some people may think, oh, 18,000, that's not a lot of money. Trust me, it's a lot of money. Yes. And some people are not earning that. Yeah. You know, and if I'll be honest, I have a cousin of mine who got married, and he's British, and he's not earning 18,600. So we're battling what to do. And God is faithful. She got a visitor's visa. So she's having immigration integrity. That's another thing I will say, that if you are here and you get a visitor's visa for 6 months, when you come, go back. When you come, go back. Build up immigration integrity. Because there's more than UK. There's other countries to go to, but if you come here and you become an overstayer, then things can become very difficult before they get easy. So if it's from, what we can say is from today onwards, if you know anybody's coming, when they come, you invite them, let them go home, and let them be coming and going, coming and going, coming and going. Before you know it, God will give them visa for America, visa for South Africa, and they'll be coming and going, but you come here and you stay, and then there's a lot of suffering involved. Because I speak from experience, my brother-in-law, up and down, this lawyer, went to that lawyer, go to this lawyer, and God worked it out, but it was years, and it was pressure and stress. So, if you're bringing your husband or wife, you need to earn 18,600. So if you're not, then you cannot bring them as your spouse. And so, as I said, what my relative did, we brought her as a visitor, and she is coming and going. She's now got 2 years. She's come and she's going. So we're just going to do that until we can find a way to increase his money. So anybody who has leave to remain in the UK, or you're married, you have leave to remain, and you have married, and you want to bring your spouse in, you can. So you have to be at least 21, and the person who's bringing you in must have leave to remain, and you must be seeking entry clearance. So you cannot, if you're not in this country, you make the application. You can also make it from here, but that would mean possibly that, for example, I have a case with a lady now, and she came as a student. So she's finished her student time and now on a work permit, and so she got married while she's here, which was fine. So she could now apply for a spousal visa, even though she's on a work permit. So whichever scenario. So once it's granted, they normally give the person 2 years, and after that they get indefinite leave to remain and then British nationality. And you can also add to that your children. So if you have children, and you, say for example you had children already, and then you got married, but they're in Nigeria or the country, you can bring them and bring your wife as well. The only thing then is if you're bringing the wife, if you're bringing the wife or the husband by themselves, you have to show you're earning 18,600. If you bring the wife and children, you have to show, I believe it's 24,000 pounds. Yes. Yes. So, and with the spousal visa, what they want to make sure is that it is a valid marriage. Okay? So you have to show that obviously you got married, your marriage certificate, photographs, you have to put it together very well. That's why I said again, make sure you get a good solicitor. So you would have to show the person who is the applicant, who is abroad, they don't even need to prove that much. It's the person who's bringing you is the sponsor. So they have to show 6 months bank statements, 6 months pay slip, make sure it's over the 18,600, where you live, what you do, and all the marriage certificate, because what they will do, they will actually go and investigate and make sure that all of this was all correct. Did you want to ask something? Yes.
What if like, your spouse have a business that doesn't, and maybe like for instance 10,600, and you have your own business?
Is the person with the business, is that the sponsor or the person coming? No, as long as they're earning, as long as their business is bringing in more than 18,600. Yes.
What if you have maybe the wife has a leave to remain, she's here.
The wife has leave to remain.
Yes. And the husband is British. So he's not earning up to that, and it's got a business. If she applied for indefinite stay or...
So the wife has leave to remain here.
Yeah.
And he's
got a business.
And he's British.
He's British.
And where is he?
He's here as well.
And he has a business and he earns more than 18,600?
Yeah.
Well, if she has indefinite leave to remain already...
No, just leave to remain. If she applied for indefinite leave to remain.
How many years? Like 3 years did she have or something?
Yeah.
Yes. So she can now apply for indefinite leave to remain. Yes, so she could apply for it in her own right and say that I'm married to a British citizen. But she's not an overstayer, is she? No, so she's got leave to remain. So yeah, discretionary, so she must have about 2 or 3 years. Yeah, so from there, she's 2.5 years. Now from there she can apply for indefinite. But she didn't get that 3 years through the husband, did she?
She got it through her husband.
So yeah, so if she got it through her husband, so after that 3 years of leave to remain, the next one is indefinite leave to remain. Yes, and she would have to tell her to do the right life in the UK test. Yes.
I know she's on spouse visa. They gave her 2 years, 10 years. They gave her 10 years. So which she has to renew 2.5 years every.
Yes. So is she on the last 2.5 years?
No, she just got it 2.5 years.
Okay. No. So okay. I see what you mean.
She had to wait.
Yes, she would have to wait. Because did she come as a student?
No, she came as a visitor.
And changed it here. And then she's got the 2.5 years. So how long has she been here now?
So the year 2002, but she only just applied and they gave her the
2.5. Yeah, so she would need to do another 2.5. I think it's over after 5 years. Then she will now do the indefinite leave to remain. Yes. Yeah. But she's, if I can use the word, she's safe in any event. Okay, because her husband's British, so she wouldn't even necessarily need to do spousal visa. After she's done the 2.5 years a few times, then she'll just go straight for British. Yes. Is that okay? So if you bring in your husband, yes, ma'am.
I have a girl. She's here, not in this London, she's living in Manchester. She got a British passport and she had a son.
She has a son.
Yes.
She has a British passport.
She had British passport. And her spouse is Nigerian.
Okay.
Now the spouse tried visiting visa to come and join her since she was not working then. But unfortunately, they didn't give the boy the visa. They refused him.
Find is that when you're going to apply for a visitor's visa, like my relative, you have to, as the person who is the applicant for the visitor's visa, which is the gentleman in Nigeria, he has to show that he has ties to Nigeria, that when he's come to visit his wife, he will go back after. That is what happened there. Like, for example, my own example, my cousin and the wife. So she, fortunately, they got married in Nigeria, then he's British here. So she works in a company, like in one of the states in Nigeria. So they provided a letter, provided pay slip, everything that she works here. And when the UKBA checked out the company, they find out it's a reputable company. So I imagine why they would have refused him is either they said he didn't have enough money in his account, or they say they was the same thing. They just rotate it. There are all the different reasons.
Yes, excuse me.
So they would have
He
said
doesn't have enough money in his account.
Yes.
And the problem is the wife here doesn't have enough work.
Because you would have to show, with just visitor's visa, there's no figure, but you have to show that the person who's applying, who's in Nigeria, must be doing something reputable and got a job that pays money, because in the application form for the visitor's visa, they say to you, how much is your ticket? How much do you have? How long are you going to stay? So you must have, I would have said, when I advise, and even my own case, my own cousins, I said to her, make sure you have at least £1,500 or 2,000 equivalent in your account, because she's working in Nigeria, so they want to make sure that when you come to the UK, you are going to go home. So part of it was to show that she's got enough money in her account, he's got enough money in his account, or she has, well, in particular him, and he has to show that he's doing something. What was he doing? No, in Nigeria, what is he doing?
In Nigeria?
Yeah.
He is a printer.
Okay.
But you know, the company in Nigeria goes up.
Yes. So
there's no enough
what I advised my sister-in-law to do at the time is that at the time when we first started thinking about visitors visa, there wasn't enough money in her account, so she had to just basically build up the money with her wages and any other money to show that she has enough money in her account. You see? So if he can prove that, show that he has a job, show that he has somewhere to live, show that he has ties to Nigeria. Irrelevant, because what is irrelevant is he's coming to see his wife. What they're saying is his visitor's visa, and we don't want you to come and not return. She as well has to show she's got somewhere to live, and she has enough information, and she's got enough money in her bank account that if he comes, she can take care of him. So that is really it. So what I would say is that if he's not got a good enough job now, you need to sort of wait, get a good enough job, and make sure there's money turning over. Okay? He has somewhere to live, he's got things that he can show that, yes, we believe that he will go back. And she herself has to show as well that she's got something doing here in terms of finance to take care of him, but he needs to show that. Because otherwise they'll say, which we know we all do all the time, is he's going to come and not go back. Okay?
Yeah. A student of mine is having a problem. You know this issue of students.
Yes.
Yeah, this is 0% not working.
Yeah.
And so this my student is been renewing his visa.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we go to this school today, pay like £2,000 there.
Yes.
In another 3 months or so, the school is shut. And then after that, you have to go through the immigration, process again to get another approval of
a school.
Sorry?
Another approval of another school.
Another school,
Yes.
and then pay another money to UKPA, and she's going through this. So recently, what happened to her now is that she now went to this college is closed now, and then she went to this lawyer to help her to, do this, and then that lawyer confused, messed her case up to the extent that they said she should go back home to go and start all over again.
Yeah.
So, in that situation, I'm just asking, what can she do?
What she needs to do, because I don't know the whole scenario, but I've got a bit of information, she needs to get proper immigration advice as to whether I know she's already had a solicitor, but she needs to get proper immigration advice, because when you've been here for a certain period of time, after you've done your degree, you can do a master's. And then once you've done the master's, you can't do another master's, you have to find another course to do. So either she has finished all her options, she may have exhausted all her options by way of degree, by way of master's. What was she doing, a degree?
She did a postgraduate PG.
That's right. So she may be able to do a master's, but obviously she needs to find a reputable college. She's going to have to pay money, and they're going to provide her with the information to provide to the UK Border Agency. It depends what course she wants to do, what she wants to do.
Because I think her passport expired now, so I don't know.
Has her visa expired?
Yeah, it's expired, and she was trying to...
And then that's the difficulty, because once you're a student, because they do them with points, and one thing you must make sure you do, once you are a student,